Who cares what I think? Moonjumper here. Welcome to this special edition, episode 7 of Who Cares What I Think. For the first time in 47 years, an animated series with the words Star Trek in the title. We have real Klingons. Mike McMahan knows Star Trek, and I appreciate that. One senses that Alex Kurtzman, who I swear is yet to watch an episode of Star Trek, even though he's been running the franchise for years now.
Wait, stop the tape. I want to add a little clarification to my recording from last week. I do not hate Alex Kurtzman. I don't even dislike Alex Kurtzman. I am a great admirer of how prolific this man is. I mean, he's kind of my hero in that regard. You know, rumor mongers talk about him being sidelined. No, he is one of CBS's main go-to guys. He has a long-running relationship with CBS long before Star Trek, and he's still doing plenty of other projects for them. That's because the man gets things done, and I do admire that. And I'm a fan of some of his work. You know, I love what he did with the Hawaii Five-0 reboot. I'm not being sarcastic. In 10 years, I never missed an episode. In fact, I was working nights, so Hawaii Five-0 was the reason I actually subscribed to CBS All Access. It wasn't Star Trek. Discovery hadn't even been announced yet. That's how long I've been a subscriber. He's a talented and prolific guy, but thus far, he has not been a good fit for Star Trek. Maybe because he does have so much on his plate. Too much on his plate. He has not taken the time to do his homework when it comes to over 560 plus hours of pre-Discovery Star Trek. He even wrote Star Trek 09, apparently having never watched Star Trek. He had Pike referring to the Federation as an armada rather than Starfleet. And years later, in a recent interview for Picard, after he's already been running the franchise for years, he again seemed to not understand the difference. He said Picard left the Federation to retire to his vineyard. No, Picard didn't leave the Federation, he left Starfleet. He lives in France on Earth, which is a part of the Federation. He is a citizen of the Federation. He retired from Starfleet. When you retire from the US Navy, you're not leaving the United States. And you could say, well, okay, maybe that's a slip of the tongue or semantics, but Discovery Seasons 1 and 2 speak for themselves when it comes to blowing up continuity. And I'm not just talking about visual continuity or that Spock had a sister we didn't know about. I'm talking about significant story continuity bombs that impact or ignore pre-existing plot lines simply because the writers and creators working under Kurtzman, you know, he's the boss, the buck stops with him, were completely unfamiliar with those pre-existing stories they were writing a prequel to. That's been my frustration with Alex Kurtzman. Well, credit where credit is due. If Mr. Kurtzman had anything to do with bringing in Mike McMahan, or if it was higher-ups at CBS or whoever, because this is not an issue with Mike McMahan. It is not an issue with Lower Decks. Lower Decks is a love letter to the classic canon and continuity. So that said, Moonjumper here with episode 7, part 2 of my very detailed analysis of the first half of season 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks. Be sure to watch part 1 if you haven't. By the way, warning, there are spoilers ahead, and also be aware this is a lengthy discussion. I want you to watch all of it, but if time is limited, there is a table of contents in the description down below. Just click on the time code for the topic you are most interested in. Picking up where I left off from part 1, here's part 2. Roll the tape.
Who cares what I think?
And that brings me to episode 3, which proves that Mike McMahan is clearly not Alex Kurtzman, and that Lower Decks truly is Mike McMahan's baby and not Alex Kurtzman's. Not only has McMahan actually watched Star Trek before getting paid to write it, he understands the mistakes made by the Kurtzman camp and why many of those mistakes have been so off-putting to OG fans. So much so that McMahan is actually brave enough to poke some fun at some of those mistakes, and hopefully not getting fired for it. Meaning, fellow OG fans out there, you need to give this man some support. Case in point, episode 3, Temporal Edict, which, refreshingly enough, has nothing to do with time travel. It's a farcical story about work schedules, but that's beside the point. Episode 3, unlike the first 2 episodes, which were mildly humorous, the third one had me laughing my butt off because it did some true satire, including taking the over-the-top Mary Sue trope and flipping it on its flipping head. You heard me right, folks. Lower Decks grew a pair and openly made fun of the Mary Sue stereotype. Now, I mentioned in my review of the trailer that I was never hung up on whether Michael Burnham was a Mary Sue or not. For those who don't know, Michael Burnham, played by Sonequa Martin Green, is the main hero of Star Trek Discovery, just like Kirk was the main hero of the original series, which is fine by me. If she's the hero, let her be the hero. My problem with Discovery was never Michael Burnham. My problem with Discovery is its complete destruction of the continuity. That said, there's no question that back before Discovery even aired, the creatives in the Kurtzman camp came on the stage in the most abrasive, tone-deaf manner they could, snarking about how passé the original series was with its, quote, cardboard sets, end quote, and its racist, sexist casting. Star Trek we're talking about. These new Hollywood hipsters, were here to fix the franchise they clearly knew nothing about, bragging that they had cast the first minority female commander and the first LGBTQ main character, both of which they had to end up walking back after it was pointed out to them that Captain Sisko was black, and Captain Janeway was a woman, and Colonel Kira was a woman. And before you split hairs and say, oh, but Michelle Yeoh, and I love Michelle Yeoh, I'm not criticizing Michelle Yeoh or any of the Discovery cast members. They've got a great cast. That's not the point. But Michelle Yeoh played the first minority and female captain simultaneously in a prominent recurring role. Wrong! That distinction should probably go to Captain Erica Hernandez on Enterprise 15 plus years ago. And when it comes to LGBTQ, you got DS9. Jadzia Dax was an openly bisexual and arguably transgendered woman, not to mention the Dax symbiont itself is androgynous. And holy moly, they are doing it again! I can't believe this! This is breaking news as I record this. The Kurtzman camp over at Secret Hideout is proudly announcing that Star Trek Discovery Season 3 will introduce the first, their words not mine, the first non-binary and transgendered characters in Star Trek history, which is wonderful news. Problem is, they're not the first, and 4 years in, why don't they know this? Enterprise introduced the Vissians, which includes an undefined third gender, neither male nor female, called a cogenitor. That was over 15, almost 20 years ago. I already mentioned Dax from Deep Space Nine, which the Discovery showrunners have apparently already forgotten about after being previously called on it, and any Star Trek fan is certainly familiar with Soren of the Najai, whose entire species is non-gendered. Soren, with whom Commander Riker had a romance 30 years ago. But forget that. How about 56 years ago? The year was 1964. Yes, I'm talking about The Cage. Gene Roddenberry wanted the Telosians to be completely androgynous. That means without any definable sex. He hired female actors to portray vaguely masculine, vaguely feminine figures with electronically filtered voices that were equally androgynous. Roddenberry talked about this for decades prior to his death. And guess what? The woke, oh-so-well-researched showrunners of Discovery completely missed that when they made the Season 2 episode If Memory Serves, a direct sequel to The Cage, possibly the only classic episode any of them ever watched. And by Discovery standards, it's actually a fairly decent episode. But these woke showrunners that are here to fix Star Trek completely missed the whole point of the Telosians' undefined sexuality by hiring male actors with big booming male voices. Great job. Oh, and of course they had to redo the Telosians' brilliant timeless makeup design, because Discovery. And these folks lecture Star Trek fans who were raised on the concept of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. fans who know Star Trek's long-celebrated history of inclusion. So yeah, it kind of rubs people the wrong way when the showrunners of modern Trek trumpet that they are the first to do this and the first to do that when they clearly are not. And you have to wonder, are they that ignorant of the source material, which they are literally being paid to know inside and out, or are they lying? Thinking the fans of the franchise who know the source material somehow won't notice? I honestly don't know which is worse. That foments resentment, and it's frankly a disservice to their own characters vis-a-vis fans feeling any warmth or goodwill towards the key example, Michael Burnham. Even though I think she's an okay character and very well acted. In fact, I loved the chemistry she had with her adopted brother Spock. At the same time, she does have a tendency to come off as arrogant, as abrasive and judgmental towards others. She's the science officer, and yet there is no need for any other expert or specialist on board the Discovery, because whatever the task, she is the only one who can master it, even when it's not her specific field, such as being the test pilot for a very non-Trek experimental craft. Who needs that insignificant blondie, Lieutenant Detmer, who actually is, a pilot? You look at it that way, Burnham really does check off every Mary Sue stereotype, including in Season 2, she's constantly getting away with belittling and berating her captain, who just happens to be Christopher Pike, and he loves her for it. Why? Because she's Michael Burnham, and it's her job as Michael Burnham to put that privileged male captain, transported out of that racist, sexist original series of the 1960s, in his place. Now, whether or not that was the intention, that is how it was coming off to a whole lot of people who know and love Star Trek and know and love its inherent inclusivity. And I think Mike McMahan recognized that design flaw in Star Trek Discovery and quite bravely decided to have some fun with it.
I am always right.
With the creation of Ensign Mariner. And I love Ensign Mariner. She's a great character. And she is brilliantly voiced by comic actress Tawny Newsome, who is, side note, simultaneously starring in Space Force with Steve Carell, another hilarious sitcom that's not what you think. Yes, Mariner is a badass who kicks ass, but she can crack a smile. She's caring. She has a sense of humor, and she's self-aware enough that she can laugh at herself as much as she can laugh at the crazy situations around her. And yet, I suspect it is not an accident that Mariner's character shares a certain similarity with Michael Burnham. Mariner is an attractive, physically fit young black woman, a Starfleet officer busted down in rank for insubordinate action, much like Michael Burnham. And before the pilot aired, I was a little concerned that she was just going to be a Burnham knockoff, and that her scared, nerdy sidekick, Ensign Boimler's whole reason for existing was to be her punching bag in the most mean-spirited way possible. Well, so far, that has not happened. Indeed, he's not her abused sidekick. He's her co-equal partner, and they have great comedic chemistry together, with Boimler actually being the annoyed Dean Martin playing it straight to Mariner's wacky Jerry Lewis.
Ooh, this is the new shuttle with the blast shield! Yeah! The blast shield, the blast shield, and it comes down and it goes up. Blast shield!
It's Mariner who is a dork, and I mean that in the most loving way. She's one of us. It's Mariner who geeks out over the most obscure Star Trek trivia.
Gary Mitchell.
I'm sure I could look him up.
And by mid-season, we find out she's a bonkers conspiracy theorist. And no, she doesn't get it right. Sure, Boimler is kind of a nervous, nerdy guy. He's a rookie, but he's very competent, albeit less experienced than Mariner, and not because she's this great Mary Sue a la Rey from Star Wars who can take on a Sith Lord with zero training. Mariner has earned her skill. She's older than Boimler, having held higher ranks on more prestigious ships. He's a rookie while she's been in the field. So she really isn't a Mary Sue in the classic sense. That said, Mike McMahan does deliberately poke some fun at the Mary Sue trope. And by the third episode, he's not even hiding it anymore, and flips that trope on its head. Partway through the episode, Mariner and Commander Ransom, played by the always funny Jerry O'Connell, get imprisoned by some pissed off aliens, and they have to decide who's going to fight the big brawny alien in the arena for their freedom. Well, for a moment, I really did start to groan when Mariner goes full throttle Michael Burnham, starts berating her commanding officer, belittling him in every way possible, and insisting that she has to be the one to fight the monster because she is awesome and he is incapable. And if this had been Burnham and Pike on Discovery, he would have thanked her for his dressing down and meekly acquiesced to her superiority. I fully expected Mariner to march out there, kick the monster's ass, while Ransom looks on apologizing for his male toxicity. No! The exact opposite. I shit you not. Ransom goes out into the arena, rips off his shirt, revealing godlike muscles, and does a full-on Kirk Fu beatdown of this massive, incredible Hulk-like monster and saves the day, while Mariner looks on from the cell eating humble pie. And not only that, you really won't believe this, she finds him attractive. I shit you not. And there's more. Up on the ship, the aliens are attacking, and it's Ensign Boimler who very competently saves the day.
Yeah, but I have a phaser. These guys are lightweights. This is what the red alert's about?
Mariner doesn't do anything in this episode except shoot her mouth off. And then she actually pays for it. She's put in the brig to eat some more humble pie because she was completely insubordinate to her commander, who actually saved their butts. And she knows it. She recognizes that she, not he, was out of line. In a TV episode made in the year 2020. I hope Mike McMahan still has a job, because that was refreshing to see. Don't misunderstand. I don't want to see Mariner constantly get the short end of the stick. That would get very old very fast. I want to root for her as the heroine. I want to see her kick butt. But it's nice to see a show in the year 2020 acknowledge that their main female heroine isn't perfect. She isn't invulnerable. She's a human being who is part of a team, of which she's not even the captain of that team. She's a part of it. And alas, an acknowledgement that there may indeed be other members of that team who are just as valuable and talented as she is. What that means is that Mike McMahan is not Alex Kurtzman, and Lower Decks is not Discovery. Yes, Kurtzman's name is listed, but that's contractual. This is Mike McMahan's baby, and I implore you, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you do love Star Trek, I highly encourage you to give Lower Decks a chance. Because if you don't even give it a chance, if nobody watches it because they're still pissed off about Discovery, CBS will take that to mean that fans do not want a canonical looking Star Trek, that we don't want proper Klingons and Starfleet ships and uniforms that are actually recognizable. They will take that to mean they need to double down on Discovery style Trek to win us all back. You will be sending the exact opposite message you want to send. Furthermore, if you decided months before this thing even premiered that you hate it, then you may be missing out on a rather enjoyable and unique little outing for the Star Trek franchise. And stop the tape. Apologies. Last week, I kind of goofed at the end of part 1 when I said I had about another 20 or so minutes in my original recording, which is now well over 2 weeks old. As it turns out, I rattled on a lot more than I realized. I simply cannot shut up when it comes to Star Trek. So now there's going to be a part 3. In parts 1 and 2, I've been talking about the things that I like and even love about Lower Decks. Mike McMahan has done an extremely admirable job of bringing back actual Star Trek, albeit in the form of a slapstick comedy, which is new for Star Trek. Every Star Trek series has had comedy of some sort, and we've even had animated Star Trek in the past, but this is the first time we have had a full-on animated sitcom, and a lot of people aren't used to that. But I'll tell you what, I'd much rather have a slapstick comedy which honors Star Trek canon than a drama, no matter how well written, no matter how well acted, which seeks to overwrite and override Star Trek's classic canon, because the new showrunners consider that canon and even the fans of that canon to be passé. So I admire that about Mike McMahan and Lower Decks and encourage you to keep an open mind about it. However, I also said at the end of part 2 that I'd be getting to the things that I didn't like or at least question about Lower Decks. But as it turns out, that would make this part 2 video way too long. So now my nitpicking is going to be coming up in part 3, I promise, of my mid-season, we're almost at the end of the season, my way too detailed review. It'll be in part 3, my Lower Decks nitpicks, and I hope you'll join me. Then again, who cares what I think? From deep in the heart of Texas, I am Moonjumper. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below, and I'll see y'all in part 3.